Hi. Good evening. Congratulations, Beatrice and Diego. Great conference, and of course, going in the last is good because I can overrun as long as I want to. But of course, I see a lot of people being anxious for your dinner appointment, so that's not good. So I go quite fast. So the soft power, I've been observing how the art world is changing through many, of course, different forces. As you can see, there's a lot of textbook that creates a kind of cookie cutter suggestions to municipalities. So I was interested in how the art world is kind of absorbing this kind of textbook, and did a studio at Columbia called Perenniology that really investigates the perennials, basically the art fairs and biennials and such. So there are 196 biennials that are happening in the world. That means in a given year, basically there are like 19 perennials happening at the same time, or at least 3 perennials occurring every week. So there's a lot of perennials happening through a kind of rock star curators and artists. So my theory is that since the Bilbao effect, what's happening in the world is this, that the Bilbao architecture is now being kind of replaced by kind of art events and tents. So this is my kind of very profound research and the kind of kickoff of my talk. But the experience, of course, as you know, in those fairs are quite kind of homogeneous, so we have to do something about it. I had the opportunity to actually design the auction house in Upper East Side for Sotheby's that we did bring all the kind of the galleries into the first 3 levels and kind of embrace the kind of art fair like art experience where the flexibility is provided through the diversity, not through open-ended space, how typically it is dealt with in an art venue. So these are the rooms that are kind of have 20 different types of rooms that really embraces the diversity of goods that the Sotheby's actually have to sell. And of course, those room sizes didn't really fit to the column grid, so we decided to actually expose the column itself. The museum extensions, those are the kind of changes that are happening in the world, of course, but things don't change from quite a while ago. As Corbu said, how it's problematic that the museum has to always extend. If you know this infinite expansion growth museum, and some of the discussion already had was addressed how collections are growing, and also these yellow dots means they extended over time. So the collection is increasing, and also architecture is increasing. Also, it's not just a spatial issue, also the activity and the status of museum is actually changing as a public venue where you have to really have a large interface and diverse range of activities to embrace the public. So again, this is a kind of a very profound diagram of how the world is changing. The collection is growing, the community engagement is growing, but the space, of course, is slower. So how I'm addressing the architecture is how to actually capture these changes through the extension of museums. There are 2 types of museum in the world. One is in the park and one is in the city. So I show you the two in the park. So this is a park in Quebec City, in the Battlefield Park. The museum used to exist in the park. They bought the site close, the interface is the city. So what we did was to almost peel the ground, continue the park, art is in the center, and then slip the city into the park. So like this. So the art becomes a catalyst between the city and the park. So this is how it is. It's a straightforward stacked boxes of galleries, highly kind of refined and efficient, but creating this kind of interstitial space. Of course, it's a lobby, it's kind of welcoming new address, but at the same time, it really had to address the issue of the diverse activities. By the way, this is an extension that is attached to a former prison and the church. So that's a kind of dream job for an architect. So the ground level is quite diverse, the courtyard, the shop, cafe, the atrium, but there's a column-free space that is almost like a plaza or the street that is drawn in, and this is it, how actually creates the kind of public interface, and it's not just a lobby, but it has basically caters a diverse event like gala and performance and music events and so on, and also the wedding. So as you, of course, you know this kind of the space that the museum is no longer just a gallery space, but almost the galleries are on top of the event space. There's another museum in the park we're doing. It's in Buffalo, New York. It's the Olmsted Design Park, and this is 1905 building, and then the 62 extension by Gordon Bunshaft, and our site is here. Its building is, of course, quite well known as a very simple modernism extension, but the problem was that this actually kind of blocked the kind of view to the park and made a kind of separation between the city and the park. So this is that extension. So what we did is to add a new building here. We started from a plus because it's an addition. But it's a gallery that is a plus shape that actually brings the nature into four corners and not making any direction because, of course, there's a 360 park around. The problem of the Bunshaft extension was it clearly made certain kind of separation and directionality, so we wanted to be non-directional. And then those rooms are not, of course, big enough, so we stacked different rooms above, and then these are the rooms that are stacked. Much more kind of efficient, basically gallery boxes that are stacked, and then the double height gallery in front. But I was always interested in how now the museums have to embrace these diverse activities and also create a public interface that are more and more being required to be open and transparent. So this is basically how we addressed, on top of those we created a kind of promenade and then basically covered with veil so that actually during even the harsh winter of Buffalo, people can actually enjoy the panorama of the park and also being able to use the outside of the gallery box, which tend to be, of course, tend to be just a cladding outside, but here you can actually use inside and outside for the art domain. So the diagram is this, the rooms, and then the efficient galleries are stacked, and basically by connecting these points, we created this interstitial space that really surrounds and create an image of the museum itself. So it's in a way a kind of inverse of what Bunshaft did. Bunshaft captured the nature in the center and the art around. We wanted to inverse that diagram by having an art as a core, and then the nature and the flexible space that surrounds it. So this is a plan, there's a gallery box, and then you can always escape to this, we call it a promenade, a sculpture court that is a little bit in between the gallery and outside. So it's really like this, you actually create a public promenade and public presence outside the building, so the activity of the museum is always exposed. And you can do various types of events, such as sculpture, exhibition, or just a cafe. And this is how the museum will look. Of course, these two buildings are very introverted and hermetic. This one is, of course, almost literally open, and it will be transformative because there are a lot of events, of course, will be planned by the museum, curated, and then it could be a mural on the wall, it could be a sculpture exhibition, or it could be a gala event. Of course, these are a little bit kind of pedestrian examples, but I'm sure museum curators can actually come up with better simulation. So you can see it becomes a very highly transparent box. Another thing is to really actually address the issue of Bunshaft's building. We first planned the building here, but there was a huge opposition. But the idea was to actually open up like the Olmsted's Bridge to really frame the entrance to the park. So what we did is to convert the entire wing to an educational wing, but to cover the courtyard and also create this porosity so you can actually go through this wall to the other side, so from the city to the park. So currently it is a kind of fortress. It will be opened and with a covered roof Of course, covered roof is a kind of known technique. Again, it has a kind of contrast to our covered building and a covered courtyard, having some kind of resonance and synergy. And now this covered roof is commissioned to Oliver Eliasson, so we are collaborating with him to actually create this common sky. It's a veil. Now, museum in the city. So I was lucky to be able to work on this project with Rem Koolhaas in early 2000. It's an extension of Whitney American Museum of Art. As you know, Breuer, and this is the brownstone that had to be protected. So what we decided is to launch this building. It's a building that from the courtyard that looms over the Breuer. The idea was that the three basically partite building, basically the brownstone, the Breuer, and the new building has different roles in terms of the size of the art and the era of the art that are exhibited. So the pre-war, post-war, contemporary, and media, and basically a biennial. It was kind of well received until maybe the 9/11 happened, and then became a history together with the infamous Michael Graves extension. And then, as you might know, the Renzo Piano took over. Even this one didn't really happen through the Upper East, basically conservatism. But at this moment, actually, there was even a conspiracy theory that OMA and Renzo Piano is the same office, because we always start and then Renzo Piano always takes over. Now, finally, after 20 years, we were able to do the similar things. Still a vertical museum, an extension next door. How similar is it? It's for the new museum. As you know, it's an institution also just growing with its, of course, visitors and exhibitions, but growing in terms of their activities, doing an incubator program, educational program, also an event, Idea Cities. So it's becoming almost a kind of platform and a multifaceted art entity, not just a museum. The site is next door to Sana's, the vertical museum at the terminus of Prince Street. And then this is a building that they own, and this is the site. As you know, the Bowery Street is a kind of, you can also criticize it as a center of gentrification in Manhattan. Of course, the new museum was the one that instigated that development, but of course, there is a great kind of cultural, it now became a cultural center too. So we were, of course, a little bit interested in the preservation, idea of preservation too, because the building next door looks quite authentic and also plausible as maybe a part of the art venue. The site is such that the Bowery existing building is this, and our site was narrower but longer. So of course that was something that we had to really be aware of. Of course, we thought about the dichotomy, the things that comes always with museum extension, older and newer, better and worse, uglier and more beautiful. You know, the dichotomy is always a bit kind of difficult and unhealthy when it comes to a kind of judgment of the pair. So we decided to actually look at different maybe images that describes the relationship of the two that is not typical, or that is not too didactic, or that is not too simple. So for example, we did this before we started designing. So these are the series of images that we show you that describes the kind of tension or the balance of the two, like Marina and her husband, and then a gap in between. Or a rocket launcher and the rocket itself, how one supports, is highly infrastructural, and one is to be launched. So those studies actually led to come up with this diagram that is basically all the program is stacked exactly at the same level as existing buildings. So basically all the galleries, all New Ink, the offices, and the multifunctional purpose educational room, the event space is actually aligned to existing buildings. So almost like a replication of the Sana Tower, But only difference is that we're using the site depth and also putting this kind of interstitial space, the public face that has the stair atrium, dedicated elevator for the galleries, and then that stairs that continues up to the office and New Ink. And then also at the back, more infrastructure to support the vertical transportation to resolve the vertical transportation issue that exists now. So this is the image. So you can actually see that this there's a setback that we introduced, which is starts at end of the gallery level, because the Sana building actually treats the building in such a way that the galleries are and the offices are in the same kind of expression. But we wanted to make a clear statement that this is the galleries for New Museum. And then we made this public space because we wanted to create a proper terminus for the end of the Prince Street, and also to cater their event and exterior art program. And you can see that the movement, the stair, and the movement of the elevators, all the activities are exposed. So you create a kind of healthy contrast to the more inward-looking or more hermetic building and more extroverted building. And these are the terraces that for the offices and the event space. The cladding is a glass with a metal layer, so you can actually perceive the building as metallic during the day, which has a synergy to the existing museum, but also, well, during the night, you actually expose this activity and the anatomy of the museum. So we were also really interested in this kind of balance of the vertical and horizontal. This is the image also we collected in the beginning, how it balances each other. Of course, we don't want it to be so kind of tricky all the time, but so this you can see how actually this setback works, that in the terminus of Prince Street, you have this focal point of the public plaza that creates a buffer zone between the new and old, but these setbacks make the top part of the building really disappear, so it gives kind of a respect to the existing museum. I'm almost ending. This is the kind of this is their merchandise program. They're really good at cool merchandise. This is a skateboard in the form of the existing building. So we had to really think hard. What could our building be? I used this occasion to really think hard on this. And we thought that maybe it's a kind of exterior, kind of outdoor, kind of cool activity. So it's a skateboard, but maybe it could be a kite. Maybe not good enough. Thank you.